When it comes to theme park food, the expectation is that it is often overpriced and, quite frankly, not very good. And yes, let me tell you, many times that stereotype is true. However, that does not necessarily always have to be the case when it comes to the two Universal Orlando theme parks. You see, Universal has made a real concerted effort to improve their food offerings over the past few years. Now, whether this is just to dissuade people from leaving the parks and going to City Walk or eating elsewhere, or just to improve food sales, either way, we still win at the end of the day here because we're getting better food in return for our money, which, yes, is still going to be quite a lot paying for these items. However, in this gold rush of improved food at the Universal parks, many restaurants and specific food items have gone unnoticed. They've gone under the radar for a number of years now, while many other restaurants have taken all the glory, like Mythos and Finnegan's. These are places that people already know are good and go to very often, as a result are very popular. But other places that have also seen improvements in food quality or already had great food to begin with have not gotten the same amount of love and appreciation. But let me tell you folks, for you guys watching this video, that is a significant advantage to have. You're going to be very happy to know that this is the case, because these restaurants that still serve great food at potentially maybe even lower prices than some of these other places, by not being so popular, are not going to have massive lines, are not going to result in long waits if they're a sit-down restaurant, and are going to allow you to take advantage while everyone else is going to these more popular and more notable restaurants. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it, shall we? With a restaurant that maybe if you've been a fan of Universal for a while and you've been going to the parks for a number of years now, you might be familiar with, and that's Green Eggs and Ham. Now, Green Eggs and Ham for a long time was closed. It was serving nothing for a very long time and was basically empty while Universal was trying to figure out what in the world are we going to put in here and sell, right? Because whatever they were offering on the original menu was not quite popular, wasn't really selling very well, so they shuttered the thing and have since reopened it a number of years ago, right? Very few amount of years ago, actually, with a specialty tater tots menu, where basically Universal is infusing other food items with tater tots to create these sort of unique meals. These include buffalo chicken tots, pizza tots, and of course the titular Green Eggs and Ham tots. Now, these are marketed as snacks, which is evident from the pricing, which is fairly reasonable. The items only coming out to a little bit over $10. But let me tell you, the serving sizings here are a little bit larger than you might expect. These items are actually fairly filling, so they could be a replacement for a meal, or maybe just a large enough snack to hold you off until a bigger meal later in the day, or are good enough to actually share with somebody. So yeah, these are pretty good bang for your buck items. Yes, maybe they're not the most healthy or nutritious meal you could possibly have, since most of it is just these tater tots, but they are still very good and a pretty good value, I would say, all things considered. And let me tell you, when this restaurant first reopened a few years ago, it was popping. Like, the lines were going all the way out to the entrance of Seuss Landing. Like, this place was crazy popular because it was the new kid on the block. Everyone had to try the new Green Eggs and Ham items. But since then, obviously some people have stopped coming, and now it's kind of come down to, normal operations, and it being a little bit off the main beaten path in Seuss Landing has allowed its lines to really not be that bad, so you can get your meal here fairly quickly. Plus, it being off the beaten path means that there's plenty of seating available, and it's going to be in a relatively quiet area where you're not going to have a ton of guests walking by you, so that's always nice to have when you're trying to, take a load off in the middle of the day. Next, we're going to go ahead and level up to a sit-down restaurant in Universal Studios, Florida with Lombard Seafood Grill. When it comes to sit-down restaurants inside the Universal parks, it's all about Mythos and Finnegan's. You never hear anyone talk about Lombards. And listen, folks, as much as I like Lombards, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. It's for good reason why people don't talk about it. For one, it has a very limited menu. It's very seafood focused. There are very few things you can get on here that don't involve seafood. So if you don't like seafood, guess what? Don't come here. You have nothing for you. Plus, as far as like an average price goes, it actually is probably the most expensive place to eat across both Universal parks. Not by much, maybe by just $1 or $2, but yes, it is a little bit more expensive across the board than Finnegan's or Mythos, making it once again a very unpopular place to go ahead and visit. And I get it. Of course, if the price tag is a big deal to you, then yeah, do not come here. Please don't. I would not recommend it in that scenario. But if you're willing to spend the extra money, if you already are planning to do a sit-down restaurant, then yeah, I would definitely recommend Lombard's because, again, because of its relative unpopularity, on most days, you can get a table without getting a reservation and basically just walk right up on many days without having to wait. And let me tell you folks, they don't charge the extra dollars here for no reason. The food is of high quality. It's very good stuff. It's the freshest seafood you're gonna find really in any theme park, let's be honest. And as far as the seafood items go at Lombard's, maybe this is sacrilegious for me to say, but the best item, in my opinion, is the lobster roll. The lobster roll is amazing here. It is so good. It's chock full of lobster meat. It's fantastic. Yes, there are certainly more fancier things on the menu, but I like the lobster roll, what can I say? And here's the thing, I know I mentioned earlier they don't have a whole lot of stuff out there for non-seafood lovers, but they do have a San Francisco Cobb salad, which is very similar to the famous, iconic even, Cobb salad over at Disney's Hollywood Studios in the Brown Derby, right? That's the Cobb salad that people talk about all day and are in love with, but I would honestly argue that this Cobb salad, you're getting more bang for your buck. It's giving you a lot of stuff, and it's actually significantly cheaper than the Cobb salad at Disney's Hollywood Studios. So, you know, if you are a big fan of that Cobb salad over at Hollywood Studios, I would highly recommend coming to Lombard's and trying the Cobb salad here. But even outside the food, the atmosphere is fantastic. I mean, obviously from the outside, it looks pretty, right? But from the inside, it just blows your mind. You wouldn't have expected what's inside of here, right? The intricacy in the theming is just magnificent. There are a ton of aquariums around. There's a beautiful view of the lagoon outside, and it's just a beautiful place to eat. It's just a great environment. And again, because of its relative unpopularity compared to the other sit-down restaurants, it's going to be way quieter in here than it would be at Finnegan's or Mythos, where you're going to be jam-packed and you're going to have voices just echoing off the walls the entire time you're in there. This is going to be a much calmer, much quieter, much more soothing dining experience than you're going to have at Finnegan's or Mythos. Now, moving to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, when it comes to sit-down restaurants, we're going over to Islands of Adventure for the Confisco Grille. Now, the Confisco Grille, unlike Lombard's, is easily the cheapest, lowest price sit-down restaurant across both parks. But don't let that worry you folks, the food is still of high quality. And really, the only reason why it finds itself on this list is not because of anything like Lombard's, which has justifiable reasons why it is overlooked. In the case of Confisco's, it's just kind of unlucky because its location is in the port of entry, at the entrance to the park. And because of the way that Islands of Adventure is constructed, it is a giant circle. There are no shortcuts. There are no paths connecting different parts of the park. You have to walk around in the circle to get to places where you want to go. Oftentimes, people don't find themselves near the entrance unless it's the beginning or end of their day, meaning that many people just don't even think to go to Confisco's because it's not in a convenient location for them to get to. Really, the only two lands you could be in that wouldn't require you to take a hike in order to get to Confisco's to eat lunch or dinner would be Marvel Superhero Island or Seuss Landing. And here's the thing, if you're in Seuss Landing, you may be tempted to go to Mythos because that's also within the same amount of walking distance as well. So a lot of times Confisco's ends up not really getting that many guests because of this location alone. But hey, should you choose to eat here, that bodes well for you because you likely won't have to wait very long, if at all, in order to get a table here. As far as food goes, though it is the cheapest priced across the 4 sit-down restaurants in Universal, it's still able to offer a very good and surprisingly diverse menu. There's a lot of different things to be offered on here, pretty much something for everyone. The signature dish is the pad thai. That's the one that people rant and rave about all the time from here. There's also the chilled tuna bowl, which is sort of like an offshoot of that. But don't make any mistake, folks, it's not just noodles and stuff like that they have here. They also have regular fanfare as well as a bunch of other really kind of unique stuff. The other sort of like plain Jane sort of thing that's really popular is the Chipotle chicken wrap. That's kind of more my speed. But the great thing, again, with this place is that it has a very deep and diverse menu. So there really is something for everyone here. It's like the Cheesecake Factory of the Universal Orlando parks, which I don't know how you feel about that. I love Cheesecake Factory personally, so that's a compliment in my book. So yeah, for me, Confisco's really overlooked, really underrated. If you're looking for a sit-down place but not trying to break the bank, this is probably your best bet. But this is all without mentioning the atmosphere and the theming. This restaurant is themed to Port of Entry, and as a result has references and Easter eggs to all of the lands in Islands of Adventure. So there's a bunch of props just scattered completely all over the place. They're on the ceiling, they're on the walls, they're on the floor, they're everywhere, referencing all this other stuff in Islands of Adventure. So you could spend literal hours in here just looking around, spotting different things, and having a little fun playing a game of I Spy. And unlike many other restaurants, in particular the other sit-down restaurants, this has its own exclusive soundtrack, its own piece of instrumental score that you will only hear in Confisco's. It was made specifically for the Islands of Adventure soundtrack, and it only plays here. Not only is it great, you're listening to it in the background right now, but it is kind of fun that this restaurant has its own piece of music that goes alongside the food served here. But once again, keep in mind the location and try and plan your day around it for when you're planning to eat there, so that way you find yourself near it without having to walk across the entire park in order to get there. For this next one, we're going to go ahead and stay in Islands of Adventure. Moving to the Lost Continent, we're going to talk about Fire Eater's Grill. This is basically right next door to Mythos, but doesn't get a whole lot of love. Oftentimes when you walk by this quick service restaurant, you will often see nobody in line. That is a fairly common occurrence for fire eaters on a normal day. Now, a big part of this is probably because most of the foot traffic in Lost Continent is just people trying to get to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, so they don't want to spend any more time in Lost Continent than need be because there's nothing else to do there. But really, they should be stopping by because Fire Eaters offers up one of the most unique quick service meals you could possibly get in a theme park, which is a gyro. How often do you see that at theme parks? Probably, this is maybe the only time you've ever seen it, honestly. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's the best gyro I've ever had. It's pretty mid, all things considered. But again, if you're in the mood for a gyro, hey, here it is. And as far as quick service meals go, it's actually fairly priced. Like, I mean, most cheeseburgers in the park are going to run you way more than what this gyro's running you at Fire Eaters. So price-wise, it's really not that bad. And this is all to say without mentioning the piece de resistance of Fire Eaters, which is the chicken stingers, which are basically chicken tenders that have a whole lot of spicy seasoning and sauce thrown on top of them. So if you're a big spice guy, if you're really into spicy foods, then I would highly recommend this. You're going to probably love this. For me, I'm not really all that into spicy food, so personally, I've never had them, but I have heard amazing things about them. You can even get them on a gyro as well with all the toppings and whatnot. So you could really just put the whole thing together, and yeah, it makes for a pretty good meal if you are into spicy stuff. So next time you're walking through the Lost Continent and inevitably you see that Fire Eaters has no one waiting in line, maybe stop by for a bite. Though I will say, seating is a little bit limited here, and because you are so close to the main path, which of course has a ton of people walking on it, going to the Wizarding World, it's often not the most comfortable place to sit, but, you know, outside of that, the food is good, it's a good value, I would say, I still recommend it. Now, that being said, all the restaurants I've been mentioning so far have been in no particular order. They're all great foods, equally standing as far as I'm concerned, but the next two places I'm going to mention are on another level. These are elite level restaurants, and I had to save them for last as a result of that. And of course, the first I'm going to mention is Wimpy's. I made a whole video about this 3 years ago. Oh my God, 3 years ago. But anyways, in that time, the popularity of Wimpy's has increased substantially. And I'm not going to take credit for it because, let's be honest, it was not because of that video. It was really because the restaurant previously had rarely been open. It was only open seasonally and during the busiest times of the year. Now, Wimpy's is open pretty much all year round. So it's no surprise then that the popularity has increased, given that the accessibility to the food being offered there has also increased. So that makes sense. But despite this increase in popularity, it is still a restaurant that gets overlooked and often does not have too big of a line. And the reason for that is because it is the only restaurant in all of Islands of Adventure, if not all of Universal, that is completely off the beaten path. Unlike all the other restaurants at Islands of Adventure, which are all attached to the main path, or at least could be seen from the main path when you are walking by them, Wimpy's you will not see unless you walk over to Popeyes. If you have no intention of ever going to Popeyes or Me Ship the Olive, you might never even know that Wimpy's is over there. So for that reason, really, Wimpy's could be the most popular restaurant, period, with people who have actually visited it. It could be the most loved restaurant in the world. It won't even matter because the general public who do not do all this research before going to the parks will never even know it exists. Meaning that it will pretty much always remain a hidden gem and not have too bad of a line on a consistent basis. But here's the great thing about Wimpy's. Despite the fact that it is now open all year long, despite the fact it's become more popular, Wimpy's has managed to keep the fundamentals the same. They still have a chock full of toppings thrown on top of these burgers. They are still made with the highest quality burger patty you can get across the entire resort. And they're still served alongside the classic curly fries. However, the most impressive and important thing that has remained the same about Wimpy's is the fact that the burgers are still made to order. So when you order them, that's when they fire them up. They are not pre-making a ton of burgers in order to get ready for that lunch rush like they do at Mel's or any of these other quick service burger places. Because Wimpy's doesn't get the same amount of foot traffic or the same amount of business, they don't need to prep all these burgers in advance in preparation for lunch rush. You're never going to get a burger that was cooked an hour ago and has been sitting on the heater. You're going to get one that was made fresh made. Yes, that means you might wait a little bit longer after you order your burger for it to actually come out. But when you get it, it's going to be fresh and it's going to taste a whole lot better because it hasn't been sitting out there drying up under a heater for an hour. So long as this remains to be the case, it will literally be impossible for any quick service burger restaurant to ever overtake Wimpy's because they are all going to be pre-making their burgers. They're all going to have them sitting out there for a while by the time you receive them. And yeah, you'll get them a little bit quicker at those other places, but they aren't going to taste as good and they aren't going to be as fresh, simply put. So is this video just an excuse to show more love for Wimpy's as Wimpy's #1 fan? To a certain extent, yes. But there was another reason why I made this video, and that's because of the last restaurant I'm going to mention here, and that is Central Park Crepes. And the reason why I saved this for the end of the video, and not Wimpy's, was because, and it pains me to do this, folks, but this is my new favorite food at Universal. Yes, it is dethroned Wimpy's. I had it on my most recent trip for the first time, and I'd heard a lot of good things about this place, but I just kind of assumed it was overrated or maybe not for me because I'm not really a crepe guy, to be quite frank. But I tried the chopped tripletta crepe. Essentially what this was a bunch of things you would typically find on a sandwich wrapped in a crepe. Seems simple enough, right? But let me tell you folks, this meal left me gobsmacked. My jaw was on the floor. I couldn't believe what my taste buds were experiencing. And really what it was basically like a wrap, but instead of the shell of the wrap basically just being a sort of container for all the food and not really adding anything to the flavor or taste of the meal, the shell was a crepe that added a whole bunch more flavor to it, making the meal just mind-blowingly good, quite frankly. And let me tell you too, folks, this was a good amount of food, like a lot of food actually. I was left fairly full after eating this, and yet like green eggs and ham, this is priced like a snack. The price is very good on this compared to other meals you're gonna get around the park. So my stomach was happy, my wallet was happy, and even my mind was happy because they have plenty of seating surrounding this location. Even though it is just a stand, there's a bunch of seating over by Cafe La Bamba across the street that's well shaded as well and has a bunch of nice foliage, and you're away from the beaten path. So yeah, you get to watch all these people, you get to people watch for a little bit, but you're not overrun with people and feeling a little congested like you would over by Fire Eaters. The only problem is that, like Wimpy's, these are made to order, which in one sense is great because they're going to come out fresh and hot and warm and ready, but they're also going to take a while to make. And unlike Wimpy's, which might take a little bit to make, these could take a pretty significant time, especially if you do have a number of orders ahead of you, as they usually only have 1 or 2 chefs working in there making the meals. That being said, though, there is a window into the stand, so you get to watch them make it right in front of you. So that's kind of nice. At least you got a little bit of a show, quote unquote, to watch while you're waiting for your meal. but it can take a little bit, so be aware of that. And I would say if you have a family that you're trying to buy food for, I would honestly recommend staying away from this, just because if you're ordering like 4 of these or something like that, it's going to take a while to get them all. The other thing about this crepe stand is that they change the menu all the time on a regular basis. So that chopped tripletta I talked about that I love, that I mentioned earlier, guess what? It's gone from the menu, so you can't get it. So it is a con in a sense that if you do have an item on that menu that you really like and it goes away, well, yeah, that's a bummer. It sucks. You're not going to be able to get that either forever or until it returns to the menu at some point in the future. But the good news is that you're always having different things to try. You're always having different crepes to try throughout the year. So, that's fun, I guess. But, it is kind of a bummer when you do lose that magical thing. So, I was saying, like, I'd probably go back and get that chopped tripletta every time that I'd go to Universal because it was that good. But now I can't get it. So, kind of sad. But regardless of that, I will go back and try whatever the new meal is. I don't think I'm going to try the sweet stuff, even though I know that probably makes more sense with the crepe. It's probably a little too much sweetness for me. But if you're into that, I definitely would probably recommend trying that as well, even though I'm personally not going to do that. I think the savory stuff is where it's at, for me at least. But if you thought that's where we were ending the video, you're dead wrong, folks, because I got a bonus restaurant for you that you weren't expecting. This one comes out of left field. Nobody expects this one. It is not that popular in the parks. It never has that long of a line, and yet is popular worldwide. And that's Auntie Anne's. I know you're saying, what? You're recommending a chain pretzel stand for me to eat while I'm in this theme park where I get all this exclusive food that I can only get there? Are you out of your mind? Listen, man, I love the pretzels at Auntie Anne's, but I'm not telling you to go get the pretzels while you're in the park. No. Here's what I'm telling you to do. I say, get a lemonade from Auntie Anne's. I had one of these last time I was at Universal. It was in the 90s. I was sweating like crazy, and I got one of these lemonades. Oh my God, it was the most refreshing thing you could possibly get. Because think about what you're usually drinking at these theme parks is usually either water, which is very bland, or you're going the complete opposite way and you're getting fountain drinks, which aren't too particularly refreshing, right? They're a little bit refreshing, but they can't be a little too sweet. And because of all that carbonated stuff in there, it's usually not the most refreshing as it could possibly be. But the freshly brewed lemonade at Auntie Anne's, oh my God, it has to be the most refreshing drink I've ever drank in a theme park, period. Now, maybe because it was in the 90s and I was sweating bullets, but I'm telling you, if you are there on a hot day, I highly recommend this drink over anything else at Universal to cool you off. But let me know what you guys think. What is your favorite restaurants at Universal? Have you tried any of the ones I mentioned here today? What do you think about them? And I love what you have to say. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.